Good to be here with you today. I'm looking forward to another glorious day of doing this amazing work of integration, and thank you for being a part of my journey as well. So today's Q&A, we actually only have one question for today. So if you enjoy these videos, don't forget to forward your questions on to us so that we can answer them. And the question is from Elena. And Elena, thank you for this question. This is a fantastic question. So I am an INTJ and a skeptic by faith, but I have become a believer in spiritual matters due to observed and experienced phenomena with no plausible rational explanation. I was reluctant to shift. I am still of two minds. My inward-facing part embraced the new perspective, while my outward-facing parts feel honestly kind of insecure and frightened to realize that they don't understand the world. This is particularly unsettling for my 3-year-old inner child, the outward-facing sensing. Do you have any advice for this? You recently addressed during using daily rituals in an answer to someone's question, which is a practice I have had for several years and enjoy. But it doesn't make me not startle and feel afraid when something actually answers. This part is just for your context, Merja. Questions no one but me can answer. So, yeah. This situation, in brackets, realizing I'm afraid of the metaphysical phenomena, even though I experience them regularly, is a specific example of what I mean about a deep level of fear conditioning. I think this is scraping at conditioning of the world as basically safe or unsafe, which can be set very, very young. Yeah, it's absolutely true. Is my surprise about being responded to based on the experiences with caregivers who often didn't? Is the fear around what it meant to the child me to be directly noticed and addressed, usually forced from whatever I was doing into chores or family duties that were excruciatingly draining and uncomfortable for me, etc. Okay, so your question, there's actually a couple of things that I want to respond to here. First of all, the unsettling 3-year-old, the outward-facing sensing part of you, which can be very, very startled by certain things. And what I mean by that is that with the INTJ model, and actually it relates to the INFJ as well, but the INTJ, the round table model, so to speak, the 3-year-old inner child is what we call an investigator. So it's outward facing, it's collecting information by sensing things, by investigating things. And then even if it's just inside of your own head, you hear a voice answering a question, it can be very startling because it's not actually in the outside world, it's within you. So you are almost forced, or your 3-year-old inner child investigator outward sensing is almost forced to take in information from a place that it's not used to taking the information from. So that is very startling. So imagine, having a thought, a conversation inside of your head about something that happened in the past. You think about it over and over and over again, and then all of a sudden somebody's right next to your ear and says something to you, and you get startled by that. It's because that input is coming from a place that you weren't anticipating. So it's the same thing in here, but in reverse. Your 3-year-old inner child is so used to getting the feedback from the outside world that when the feedback actually comes from within you, or from this metaphysical space to which you connect intuitively, it's very, very startling. So that in and of itself, for me, kind of covers that startling piece of you. Yes, absolutely. we can also be startled by external things. So that doesn't remove that perspective. Of course it can. But in reference to your question here, that's what I wanted to share with you on that. And then you were saying, you recently addressed using a daily ritual is an answer to someone's question, which is a practice I have had for several years and enjoy. But this doesn't make me not startle and feel afraid when something actually answers. So that's exactly what I mean. It's like, it's not coming from the daily ritual of the outside world activity, this thing for you. This is an inner, almost like an inner connection to the source that allows you to get intuitive answers. And when the message is so strong intuitively that it almost sounds like it's real, then it absolutely can startle the 3-year-old inner child. Absolutely. Okay. Then you asked, you said, this situation, realizing I'm afraid of the metaphysical phenomena, even though I experience them regularly, is a specific example of what I mean about deep level of fear conditioning. I think this is scraping at the conditioning of the world as a basically safe or unsafe, which can be from a very, very young age. And that's absolutely right. You're saying, is my surprise about being responded to based on the experiences of my caregivers who often didn't? So it absolutely can be. Absolutely, it can be around that. And so if we look at the startling reaction of the 3-year-old inner child for you, we have the messages coming from an unexpected source. That's one part of it. But then you also, if you have fear conditioning, your initial reaction is always to get startled. So even when, and I think for you it's just a matter of when, because you do your integration work so diligently. When your 3-year-old inner child realizes that the messages can come from within and from outside, and that is no longer the kind of the almost like a knee-jerk reaction to that startling piece, then you may realize, it's quite possible that will just go away once you get used to it and once you bring consciousness around it. But if that's not the case, if the case is actually that you're startled because you profoundly feel like the world is an unsafe place, then we're looking at a very different approach and very different, like a continuation of this work. And what that looks like, where it often comes from, is if we do feel from our caregivers, from the people in a perceived position of power in our lives, that something was unsafe or something was unexpected or not consistent, then we absolutely can have that fear response to everything in life. Now, my question to you is, if you look at the 4 Fs, when you have like a reaction, you can have the fight or flight or freeze or fawn, and those responses. And if you look at those responses, which one is it for you? So do you, fight when you get startled? Do you run away from the situation when you're startled? Do you freeze and not be able to take any action when you're startled? Or do you start getting into some kind of compulsive behavior? And when you start looking at that piece, then you will be able to kind of say, hey, you know what? This might be coming from this kind of an experience that I've had. And just recognizing that experience can help. But the main thing is to start changing the response, to change the experience that you had. So you get startled. Now what do you do with it? So you get startled, you might get a freeze reaction. Now what do you actually choose to do with that? So do you choose to go for a run, take your power back by saying, no, I'm not doing this, I'm not freezing, I'm going to continue doing something else? So start that conversation with you. That's where I would take it next if I were in your shoes. So yes, it can absolutely come from the place of sense of being violated as a child. But also, and this is something that I've realized recently, it's good to remember with these startling reactions that we get, that that's just a reaction. So really where it comes from doesn't matter anywhere near as much as what you do with it. Of course, it matters in a way that it helps you understand things more. It might help you give some more compassion towards yourself and the people that caused that in you. It might close those relationships and so on. But we all must remember that we are not actually as victimized by our circumstance as we may feel. So if you're feeling like you have no control over this, think again. You actually have a lot more control over this than you believe. Now, this is not a healing space that I'm talking about right now. This is very much a development space. So if you're listening to this video and you're thinking, oh, that's just really cruel, you're actually in a healing space, and this answer is not for you. This is for the development space. This is the development space answer. So in those situations, when we start aggressively taking back our power, for example, doing physical exercises such as, martial arts training or weapons training, or, just deciding to go for a physical exercise like run, or, just deciding, almost becoming like default aggressive, then what happens is that you change that pattern, you reclaim your own power, and then you start moving more into a direction that is right for you, rather than being at the receiving end of whatever is going on in that space of startling. So wherever that came from doesn't matter anymore, because it's not you're choosing deliberately not to focus on how you've been victimized in the past, and you focus on where you're going in the future and how you're going to be empowering yourself in the future. So that's what I would say to that. It absolutely can be, around being victimized as a child, but you're not a child anymore. So perhaps it's time to, what's this saying? Pull your big girl pants up. I'm not saying this to you specifically, Elena. I'm talking to myself too. And just say, hey, why am I looking at that victimization piece when I have so much to live for? So in relation to just kind of, if we just close that loop with faith, does it matter where your worry around faith is coming from? And is it more important that you get to enjoy the messages that's actually coming from that connection that you have to your source? So that's my question to you. Okay, thanks, Elena, for that amazing question. That was so much fun to answer. You always have such insightful questions and comments. Those of you who don't know, Elena is one of our mentors in training. She's becoming an integration mentor. And you're going to be helping an awful lot of people with all the insights that you have. So thank you, Elena, for that. Great to have that question from you. And thank you, everyone, for taking part in today's session. Thanks for listening in. And as I said before, whatever questions you've got, nothing's out of limits. You can ask anything you want. All right. Thanks, everyone, for this week. I'll talk to you next week.